Товарищ Верховный Главнокомандующий, начальник Рязанского гвардейского высшего воздушно-десантного командующего гвардии полковник Евкадьев.
On April 15th, two things happened simultaneously that Putin did not want the world to notice together. $1 billion landed in Ukraine's bank account, pulled directly from frozen Russian assets sitting in United Kingdom financial institutions. Money that belongs to Russia, repurposed to fund the destruction of Russia's military ambitions in Ukraine. And on the same day, the United Kingdom's Defense Secretary John Healey stood before representatives of 43 nations in Berlin and announced the largest drone package the United Kingdom has ever delivered to any ally in any conflict. 120,000 drones heading to Ukraine, built on British soil where Russian missiles cannot touch them. Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine expecting to face a divided, hesitant West that would issue statements, hold summits, and ultimately accommodate Russian territorial ambitions. Instead, he created an enemy that is now sending his own frozen money and 120,000 aerial killing machines to the country that is destroying his army. The rage coming out of the Kremlin right now is real, and it is the rage of a man who realizes he cannot stop what the United Kingdom just put in motion. To understand the full weight of what the United Kingdom just delivered, you need to understand the financial architecture that made it possible. The $1 billion Ukraine received on April 15th did not come from British taxpayers. It came from Russia. When Putin launched his full-scale invasion in February 2022, Western nations froze approximately $300 to $100 billion in Russian sovereign assets held in their financial systems. Russia's money sitting in Western banks and investment vehicles, suddenly inaccessible to the Kremlin. For 2 years, the question was what to do with those frozen assets. Giving them directly to Ukraine opened legal questions about sovereign asset seizure that Russia could exploit in international courts. So the group of 7 nations developed a more elegant solution. The Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Initiative, created in the summer of 2024, allows G7 nations to provide loans to Ukraine backed by the future interest and investment returns generated by the frozen Russian assets. Russia's own money generates the revenue. That revenue repays the loans. Ukraine gets the cash now. Russia gets the bill later. In other words, Putin's invasion of Ukraine is being funded by Putin's own frozen assets. The Kremlin is involuntarily financing the defense of the country it is trying to conquer. The $1 billion that arrived on April 15th is part of a $3 billion commitment between the United Kingdom and Ukraine under this framework. And that $3 billion is itself part of a $50 billion program spanning all G7 nations. Putin has been frothing at the mouth over this arrangement since it was created. He has no legal mechanism to stop it. He has no diplomatic leverage to reverse it. Russia's money is working against Russia, and there is nothing Moscow can do about it. But the money, as significant as it is not what sent shockwaves through the Kremlin on April 15th. 120,000 drones. The United Kingdom's new drone package for Ukraine is the largest single drone commitment any nation has made to any ally in the history of modern warfare. Long-range strike drones capable of reaching deep into Russian territory. Logistics and reconnaissance drones extending Ukraine's battlefield awareness. Maritime operation drones continuing the campaign against Russia's Black Sea Fleet that has already destroyed a third of its warships and driven it from its main Crimean port. Defense Secretary Healey described the package as battle-proven. That word choice was deliberate and significant. The United Kingdom has not fought a war in years. Its drones have not been tested in combat on British soil. Yet battle-proven is exactly what Healey called them. What that tells you is that these are drones already operating inside Ukraine. Systems developed in partnership with Ukrainian engineers who understand exactly what the battlefield demands, now being manufactured on British soil at a scale that Ukrainian facilities, vulnerable to Russian missile strikes, cannot match. Britain is building Ukrainian specification drones in a location that Russia cannot target without triggering Article 5 of the NATO treaty. And here is the part that makes this so strategically devastating for Moscow. Consider what manufacturing drones on British soil actually means in practical terms. Every drone production facility inside Ukraine is a potential Russian missile target. Russia has spent 4 years attempting to destroy the industrial capacity that feeds Ukraine's war effort. Some strikes have succeeded. Ukrainian factories have been hit, production has been disrupted, and workers have been killed. But a drone manufactured in Suffolk or Yorkshire arrives at the Ukrainian front line, having been built in a facility that Russia cannot legally strike without triggering a NATO Article 5 response. Britain has effectively moved Ukraine's drone production behind NATO's most powerful collective defense guarantee. Russia can threaten. Russia cannot act. Every drone that rolls off a British production line does so under the protection of an alliance that Putin has spent his entire career trying to weaken. The United Kingdom announced in September 2024 that it would begin mass-producing drones to counter Russian aggression. That decision came at the precise moment Putin was testing NATO boundaries by sending Russian drones into Polish airspace. Britain watched those provocations, made a strategic decision, and spent a year building the production capacity to deliver 120,000 drones in a single package. Russia spent that same year threatening, posturing, and issuing warnings. The United Kingdom spent it building. The drone package and the funding are only the headline elements of what the United Kingdom delivered on April 15th. Because alongside 120,000 drones came hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds and thousands of air defense missiles. The artillery rounds matter enormously for where this war is heading. For most of the conflict, Russia held a significant artillery advantage over Ukraine. At its worst, the disparity reached 10 rounds fired by Russia for every one fired by Ukraine. By early 2025, Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky confirmed that Ukraine had narrowed that gap to 2-1 along much of the front line. The hundreds of thousands of British rounds arriving in Ukraine in 2026 pushed that ratio further in Ukraine's favor. Every artillery advantage Russia still holds in the Donetsk offensive becomes smaller with every shipment. Every Russian position that felt protected by artillery superiority becomes more vulnerable as Ukraine's stockpiles grow. The air defense missiles are equally critical. Ukraine achieved an interception rate of 89.9% against Russian drones and missiles in March 2026. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry has set a target of 95%. Hitting that target requires a continuous supply of interceptor missiles at a volume that no single nation's production can sustain alone. Britain's thousands of incoming missiles keep Ukraine's layered air defense architecture operational at the intensity the battlefield demands. Every percentage point of improvement in Ukraine's interception rate is a Russian missile or drone that does not reach a Ukrainian city, a power station, or a hospital. And here is the part no one is talking about. The $1 billion flowing into Ukraine is almost certainly going directly into drone production. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed that Ukraine is now producing millions of drones annually. Scaling that production further requires capital. British capital, derived from Russian assets, is now funding an expansion of the exact capability that caused 96% of Russia's 35,000 casualties in March. Russia is funding the drones that are destroying its own army. That is the full circle of what the United Kingdom built. Now consider what all of this means within the broader context of Britain's strategic posture toward Russia. Because April 15th did not happen in isolation. Russia now considers the United Kingdom its #1 enemy outside of Ukraine. That assessment came from John Loft, the first NATO representative ever based in Moscow, speaking to the New Statesman in December 2025. Russia has begun singling Britain out for hybrid warfare, territorial incursions, and cyber attacks in a desperate attempt to deter deeper UK-Ukraine cooperation. None of it is working. The United Kingdom signed a 100-year partnership with Ukraine in January 2025. Not a 5-year commitment, not a decade-long framework. 100 years. Designed specifically to send a message to Putin that British support for Ukrainian sovereignty extends far beyond any single presidency, any single parliament, or any single human lifetime. Britain co-founded the Coalition of the Willing alongside France, a multinational force of European nations committed to providing peacekeeping presence inside Ukraine once the war ends. The explicit purpose is to ensure that any future Russian attack on Ukraine would mean an attack on NATO forces already positioned on Ukrainian soil. Britain is also in the middle of the most significant defense spending increase in a generation. By 2027, the United Kingdom will be spending 2.6% of its gross domestic product on defense. By 2035, that figure rises to 3.5%, in line with the new NATO target. This from a nation that cut real terms defense spending by 22% between 2009 and 2017. Putin's invasion of Ukraine turned a declining British military spender into a nation rebuilding its armed forces at the fastest pace in decades. That rearmament is producing weapons. Those weapons are going to Ukraine. Here is what the United Kingdom's April 15th announcement means for America, and it is the dimension most coverage fails to fully recognize. America built the alliance framework that made what the United Kingdom just delivered possible. The G7 frozen asset mechanism that is sending Russian money to Ukraine exists because American diplomatic leadership created the legal and financial architecture to make it work. The NATO partnerships that allow British drones manufactured on protected soil to reach Ukrainian front lines function because American commitment to the alliance gives those partnerships meaning and security. What often gets overlooked is this: America is not carrying the burden of supporting Ukraine alone. The United Kingdom just committed $1 billion from Russian frozen assets, 120,000 drones, hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds, and thousands of air defense missiles in a single announcement. That is what allied burden sharing actually looks like when American leadership creates a framework that partners can operate within. Every American taxpayer who has supported the alliance structure that enables this kind of coordinated response to Russian aggression should understand what their investment is producing. Britain is sending Russia's own money to fund Ukraine's defense. Britain is manufacturing drones on NATO soil that Russia cannot destroy. Britain is building a 100-year partnership with Ukraine that outlasts any individual political calculation. This is what American alliance leadership produces. Not just American weapons and American troops. A coalition of nations making sovereign decisions to oppose Russian aggression with their own resources, their own industrial capacity, and their own strategic commitments because they trust the framework America built and the principles America has consistently defended. The numbers tell the story clearly. Ukraine produced millions of drones domestically in 2025. Britain is adding 120,000 more. The United Kingdom's defense industry partnership with Ukraine means that future packages will be larger, not smaller, as production capacity expands. Russia is producing drones too. But Russia is producing them under Western sanctions that restrict access to the microchip technology and precision manufacturing components that determine drone performance. Britain faces no such restrictions. The quality gap between what Ukraine is receiving and what Russia is producing is widening with every passing month. That gap is measured in Russian casualties. Putin thought he could exploit Western division. Instead, he created the most unified Western alliance since the Cold War. And the United Kingdom just demonstrated exactly what that unity looks like in practice. $1 billion from Russia's own frozen assets, 120,000 drones, hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds, thousands of air defense missiles, a 100-year partnership, a defense budget growing to levels not seen since 2010. Russia's response was exactly what you would expect from a regime that has no answer for what is happening. Dmitry Medvedev, Putin's most reliable mouthpiece, posted a list of, quote, potential targets in the United Kingdom, including RAF Mildenhall and drone manufacturing facilities. Sleep well, European partners, Medvedev wrote. The United Kingdom's response was to keep sending the drones. Russia has been issuing threats against Ukraine's allies since February 2022. Total war warnings, strategic arsenal ultimatums, specific target lists. None of it has stopped a single shipment, a single funding transfer, or a single political commitment to Ukraine's defense. For 40 years, the Soviet Union and then Russia used the threat of escalation to keep Western nations cautious and accommodating. For the first time, a major Western power is treating those threats as what they have always been. Empty words from a regime that is watching its own money fund the defense of the country it is trying to conquer. Did Putin just confirm that his greatest strategic miscalculation was not the invasion itself, but the alliance he created against himself by launching it? Or does Russia still have a move that changes what the United Kingdom just put in motion? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. If you want daily coverage that does not sugarcoat what is actually happening, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I post every single day, and I am not stopping.